The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Racing Form webinar for the Everest Tournament, produced in conjunction with Sky Racing World. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale. Very excited to be stepping out of my usual handicapping session comfort zone to learn something new tonight. Over the course of the next half hour, we're going to look at the 8 races that will be part of the Everest Tournament on DRF Tournaments. That's tournaments.drf.com. It'll be happening on Friday night Eastern Standard Time, starting at 9 p.m. And with me, I'm very excited to welcome Sky Racing World presenter and analyst Jason Witham. Jason, how are you doing? I guess it's this morning, I should say.
Yeah, it is in Australia, absolutely. A very good evening to you, Peter, and good evening to everybody listening. Great to be with you. Really looking forward to Randwick tomorrow. Can't wait for Everest Day. There's been such a big build-up here in Sydney and Australia in general. It's been the talk of the town. It's had all the tongues wagging, and the richest race on turf in the world. Tremendous concept. The inaugural running, of course, this year. There's been so much publicity, but it's all on the line tomorrow, and we'll be there for TVG. Can't wait.
I should point out that you'll be doing the TVG coverage along with Candace Hare, and it sounds like you guys will be getting a lot of airtime. So in addition to playing in the contest, hey, stay up late, watch TVG. Certainly DVR the coverage around the big one, and hopefully folks will get a chance to learn something and become a little bit more entrenched in Australian racing, the thriving and exciting entity that it is. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about this tournament generally. We were talking a little bit before we came on air. Different players have different approaches to a tournament that is a free roll that's going to attract thousands of people potentially with a very big prize, in this case, a trip for 2 to go racing at Randwick in April. And the two different theories are basically, some say you need to pick a lot of long shots, and you're going to have to string together several of them to have a chance. And I've certainly seen that work in free tournaments with thousands of entries. But the other theory is just cast price out of your mind and go ahead and just try to pick as many winners as possible. And somebody out there is going to have that miracle day and get to the kind of total you're going to need with this kind of field. So, Jason, as we go through the card, feel free to throw out horses at any price point. But of course, in any betting competition, any tournament scenario, preference always given to a little bit of a long shot. Will that dovetail nicely with the way you've analyzed these races?
Well, I think so. I've got a bit of a mixture in here. I am keen on a few horses that are going to go around at sort of reasonably skinny odds, but there are a couple there that I think represent some value on the card at Randwick. So we'll just play along as we go. I think there's a couple of really nice bets that are going to stand out into multiples and that type of thing. So we'll see how we go, but there are some big fields and some deep fields, as you might imagine. Everybody wants to get involved in Everest Day, so lots of depth to a lot of these races and some excellent quality as well.
All right, let's just dive right in, starting with the first, the Tab Highway Consolation. How did you see this one?
Well, the Tab Highway races have been a revelation in New South Wales. Basically, the concept has been that you've seen country class gallopers coming to city and racing in metropolitan grade pretty much every Saturday for a couple of years now, and we've had really big fields. A lot of the country trainers from outside of Sydney have really embraced the concept, and we get a lot of really competitive betting races, and so really good turnover on these races. I like a horse that I think is just a standout tomorrow. His name is number 12, Don't Give a Damn. Trained by a guy called Danny Williams. He's trained a lot of these Tab Highways winners over the course of the last 2 years. He's down in Goulburn, a little bit south of Sydney. This is a really good quality horse. He's going to be winning better races than these in his career. He's only having his 4th start tomorrow. He's won 2 of his 3 starts, and the only time he tasted defeat, he was unlucky behind a very smart one in Suncraze, who goes around a bit later on in the card as well. He won his last start by 6.5 lengths. He accelerated his away from his rivals very impressively, I thought. The only thing against him tomorrow is that he's got a wide barrier, but I think he's got enough gate speed to get across and probably sit outside the leader. I expect some good tempo in the race. Mercurial Lad will probably lead, but I think Don't Give a Damn can sit outside of him. And just the way he accelerated last start, his turn of foot, I think he can do it again. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't win. He's currently about the 8 to 5, quite something like that. So he's no magnificent price, but I think he's very going to be hard to beat. And I've put Don't Give a Damn on top. If you're looking for some value, I think that the next best clearly in the race is a horse called My Tago Son, number 3. Love the way that he won a highway here last start. He weaved his way through some traffic from last. Very impressive performance. He's going to get back in the race, probably almost to last, or certainly in that back trio. But if he's able to get a bit of clear space in the straight, I think he's the one that could be the blowout in the race. These sort of races in tab highway races, always look out for a trainer called Matthew Dunn. He trains a lot of winners. He holds the record. He's trained 12 of the winners. He's got 3 or 4 runners in this race. The best of them might be number 10, Cascada Rossa, who's about the 10 to 1 mark.
Nice. Well, several good ideas, whether you're playing in the Everest Tournament at tournaments.drf.com or following along with the TVG coverage and playing at your ADW. Hopefully we can get started on a winning note on Friday night Eastern time on this Everest card. And with that, let's move on to the second race on the night. We got a 5-furlong race here. It's the Nielsen Sports Victory Vane.
It is, Peter. This is a tricky race, as you often find with races that have mostly first starters. So often you have to go off the trial form and off breeding alone. But the horse I'm going to go for here is a horse called Santos. Now, there's a pretty wide market, this one. It's about 7 to 2 the field here. So certainly plenty of value to be had, and you might be able to jag one at a bit of odds here. But Santos is one of only 3 horses engaged in the race with racetrack experience. Now, I always think that racetrack experience means a lot to a horse when you come into these races that they've only had 1 or 2 starts or making their debuts. Certainly having been to the races is a big advantage. Now, Santos was wide all the way in a very good renewal of the Breeders' Plate, which was won by a smart type and performer. Now, he boxed on well to finish 3rd. So by sitting wide, he sort of lost that sprint that he might have had at the end of the race, but he was still able to get within a couple of lengths of performer. And I think after being off the bridle prior to the turn, if he can settle a bit better today or tomorrow, then he'll be extremely hard to beat. He's trained by Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott, one of Australia's best combination. And I think with that racetrack experience, just the awkward draw a little bit for him, but I think he should be able to find a spot somewhere, maybe 2 pairs back, somewhere just off the fence, and might be able to get the box seat run here. So I've got him on top. Santos, I thought of the first starters, Rebukes, number 12 for Godolphin. James Cummings, the trainer, looked very good in his trial. He was wide all the way there, but he wasn't asked to do a lot. He finished a close-up second in that trial, and I expect him to run well. She's a filly by Sepoy, who's having a great season as a sire. And a number 8, Munich, I think at a bit of value. He's going to be the one that might be the value here. Hugh Bowman's on top, Australia's best jockey. Peter and Paul Snowden, one of the best training partnerships we've seen, really pushed along in a recent trial. And I think he'll be ready to go when he comes to the races here. This Snitzel Colt, he might be your value. But I'll put one on top of 12 and 8.
I wanted to ask you about the difference between those barrier trials, which I assume are like practice races, and having actual race course experience. It sounds like, in your estimation, having the actual money on the line race in the afternoon is still worth more than even having good form in a trial.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. And in my opinion, it is. And I know a lot of good judges share that opinion as well. There's a lot more pressure in an actual race. The horse has to race a lot more keenly and learns a lot more. Obviously, in a barrier trial, it's a lot more relaxed. There's no real pressure to accelerate in the race or to find a position. And a lot of horses are just out there for the run. Some of them, at different stages of their preparation or expecting things, might be asked just to go around for an easy gallop. Some of them might be a bit more fired up and looking to win that trial. But in a race, every horse is out there trying to win, and it's a terrific experience for a horse, in my opinion, to experience what it's like to go to the races, to move into the barriers, experience a crowd and all that type of thing. And I think it does a horse the world of good. And we often see a horse with that one race start going on a winning next start against first starters in a race that have only barrier trial.
All right, something to keep in mind as you look at the second race on Friday night. Let's move on to race 3. We're going 7 furlongs here. The Daily Telegraph, Reginald Allen.
Yeah, good race, this one, a black type race, a listed race, and some smart 3-year-olds going around here. I think Regimen, number 1, will be the hardest horse to beat here. She's a beautiful filly, another one by Sepoy. I think she'll be winning better races than this as well. I think she's destined for a really good career. Trained by James Cumming with Godolphin. She was impressive in winning at Warwick Farm about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Her only defeat came when she was held up for a run in the straight on the fence and couldn't really get out. So I think with a bit of luck, she might well be unbeaten. She's won 3 or 4 starts to date, and I think she'll probably lead the race and control the tempo. And her jockey, Brenton of Dulla, is riding as well as anybody at the moment, and I see her leading and winning for the Royal Blue of Godolphin. Others in the mix here, I think Work Drinks gets the blinkers on first time. Your listeners might appreciate that having blinkers on for the first time in Australia is often a positive gear change, and if you do see that gear change, blinkers first time, it's always a sign that a horse is going to be more switched on and often produce a career best performance. Work Drinks, a $500,000 purchase, a very expensive colt. He looked pretty good in running second last start. And number 5, if you're looking for some value here, Yulong Jinsheng, Chris Lee's trained filly. She hit the line well in that same race that Work Drinks was in, and I think stepping up another furlong today will suit her. She's going to go around at a nice price if you want some value, Yulong Jinsheng, but I think Regiment will win. I'd put them in 1, 7 and 5.
All right, lots of ideas there to keep things going as we enter the business end, the sharp end of this Everest tournament. It's going to be taking place on DRF Tournaments. That's tournaments.drf.com. Starting Friday night into early Saturday morning, a free roll for a trip for 2 to Australia. And the 4th race in the contest is the Tab Anniversary Highway, $200,000 purse here, 7 furlongs once again.
Yeah, it's a great prize, Peter. I'm sure the winners of this competition will have a great time here in Sydney during the autumn. It's a wonderful time of the year in Sydney racing, and Randwick really turns it on. Here in the 4th race, the Tab Anniversary. So this is another of those Tab Highway races I spoke of. The first race is a Tab Highway. Usually we only have one on a card, but such as the interest in country trainers wanting to come to Randwick on Everest Day, they've put on 2 races in the Tab Highway concept. I think number 11 here, Sun Craze, is a very smart horse, and I think he'll be winning as well. Look, we're probably going to get a good guide to his chances in the first race. Now, I tip Don't Give a Damn in that race. Sun Craze is the only horse to have beaten Don't Give a Damn. So he beat him on the 9th of September at Rose Hill. So if Don't Give a Damn comes out and wins the first race, well, you'd think that Sun Craze, having that form line, looks an even better bet here in the race. He's had a little freshen up and a trial since then. He absolutely bolted in his recent trial as well. He looks to have come back in magnificent order. And from a good gate, he's got a good jockey and Corey Brown on board. I think he'll be extremely hard to beat. He's currently about that sort of 5-2 mark. Of the rest, I think there's a horse that a bit of value here I like in Delightful Feeling. He's another one trained by Matthew Dunn. As I mentioned, the trainer that's won more of these than any. He's currently about 11-1, around that quote. And coming off a win at the Gold Coast a few weeks ago, he led all the way that day. He was up at a place called Murwillumbah, his home track. I was up there on Tuesday hosting a race meeting, and he put in a gallop there, and he came home his last 633.10, which is pretty good going. The word around the track was that it was an excellent gallop, and look out for anything that he can test. Barrier 1, good jockey, Ty Anglin. He might be your value here in Delightful Feeling. And the other horse that's going to get the good run here and is down in grade is Pumpkin Pie, coming back from races like the Premier Stakes behind In Her Time. Well, that's probably the best form line for the Everest. So it's a big drop in grade for that mare, Pumpkin Pie, and she'll be right in the mix from the good draw and should get the gun run as well. But I'll put them in here 11, 3 and 8.
All right, more good ideas as we continue to go along this Everest tournament card. Once again, that prize, a trip for 2 to Randwick in April. I'm talking to the bosses about trying to get appointed the chaperone for the trip. I don't think it's going to work out, but a man can dream.
Yeah, well, hey, you'd love it too, Peter, I'm sure. But it'd be great to meet your winners as well, and be happy to certainly show them around Randwick and the beautiful theatre of the horse and the racetrack at Randwick. It really does shine during the Autumn Carnival, during the championships, and it's a magnificent racing experience. I know Mike Joyce from TVG, he was fortunate enough to come to Sydney during April of this year for the 2 days of the championships, and he mentioned that it was one of his certainly the most favourite racing experiences of his career. So yeah, it'll be a magnificent prize once again. Peter, we'll move on to the Star Mile, race 5. It's over 1,600 metres, the mile, and in Benchmark 95 company. Not a lot of speed in this race. I think that's going to play into to the hands of a couple of those that they're going to race to midfield or on pace here. I think the likes of Hanging with Willie and Dark Eyes will lead here with Harper's Choice, but I'm pretty keen on a filly here called, or a mare she is now, called Oklahoma Girl. I've had a lot of time for her for some time now. She comes through an excellent campaign during the Brisbane Winter Carnival, where she has some terrific form lines. She ran second in the Doomben Roses behind a smart filly called Kednedna, and then third in the Queensland Oaks behind one of the best fillies then, and now a mare called Egg Tart. And the way she resumed at Rose Hill, she got back to last, she flew home, and it really was a back me next time run from her Oklahoma Girl. She's terrific value. She's about 7 to 1 currently in Australia. She's had a trial since then. Again, she got back to almost last and was really pushed out in that trial under hard riding to indicate that she'll be ready to go here second up. She's won second up in the past. And I just think stepping up from that 7 furlongs to the mile here today suits her perfectly. She's got one of the best in Karen McAvoy on board, and Australia's best trainer, Chris Waller, prepares her. I think she's the value bet here, Oklahoma Girl. If you're looking for something else in the race here, Suchet, tab number 6, currently about 7 to 1 as well. Really like the way that it's hit the line. It's passed a couple of runs. 4-year-old for Godolphin. Got back to last and really finished well last time over 7 furlongs. Another one stepping up to the mile here, and that looks a suitable assignment as well. And Jaminza number 10, who's about 6 to 1, just going along really well this gelding. He's hard to knock his form. He's won 3 of his last 4 starts. Pretty good race, but I think there's some value here. 8 Oklahoma Girl to beat 6 and 10.
Sounds like a great horse to pin some contest hopes on for sure, with some obvious credentials, and that's a great endorsement, and at a price that impresses as well. A question about Chris Waller, who you mentioned is the leading trainer. When the leading trainer has more than one horse in a race, sometimes that can lead to great value. People can get confused or end up landing on the wrong horse. Of course, you'll hear others who will tell you with great confidence you always want to bet on the longer priced when a trainer has multiple entries. How does that fact of a top trainer having multiple entries factor into your analysis of the form in a race like this, if at all?
Yeah, well, it can be tricky, Peter, can't it, with one trainer with multiple entries, especially if they're all leading chances. So I think it's important to try to read between the lines a little bit as well, and just have a look at a horse, where it is in its preparation and what its main target might be. So if a horse, for instance, has excelled in running over a mile, and it's in the 6 furlong race, then maybe you think, well, perhaps his grand final is going to be in a start or two's time, so I might leave him alone today. But if you've got a horse who's been set for a race and his best form is over the mile, and the race today is over the mile, then maybe that's the race that he's going to be set for. So often, a trainer with multiple entries will have a plan for each horse for their preparation. So often you've got to look at where a horse is in his campaign as well, in his spell. Is he first up or second up? Maybe he's going to need those 2 runs before he starts to hit peak fitness at runs 3, 4 and 5, which is generally the case in Australia. The 3rd, 4th and 5th runs of a preparation are generally a horse's best. So it's important to take into account all of those different factors when you have a trainer with multiple entries.
That's very interesting. It's more the way training used to be in the States, with horses being run into form and second off a layoff and third off a layoff being an angle. These days, a lot of the top barns will have these much longer layoffs and just bring them back basically fully formed, ready to run their best. An important difference to pay attention to for those interested in learning more about reading Australian form. Race 6 is the St. Ledger Stakes, 500,000, a mile and 5/8. Where are we going here?
Yeah, well, this is a race that it's a very old race, steeped in history in Australia, and it's been brought back. It's had a long time off the scene. I think about 15 or 20 years since we've seen the St Ledger run, but they brought this race back to coincide with Everest Day. The Sydney Spring Carnival has kind of been changed around schedule-wise to accommodate this new race, and so they've elected to bring back the St Ledger. And look, it's attracted a good field, some of the best stayers going around in Sydney at least. I don't think any of these will be winning Melbourne Cups, but certainly there's some strong form. I think there'll be a good tempo in the race. The likes of Sismontane and Dukan will probably race on the pace here, and so it should turn into a true staying test. And generally in that situation, the best stayer wins. In this race, I'm going with number 2, Big Duke. Always had a lot of time for this horse. He won the Launceston Cup at Tasmanian race. He's won in Moonee Valley. He's won at Caulfield. He's an ex-UK horse. He's actually won at Epsom, this horse as well, in the UK. So he's had some success, and he's had some success over this sort of journeys as well. He finished 3rd in the Sydney Cup, which was run over 2 miles, and he did win the Chairman's Handicap at Randwick over this distance tomorrow, so he's had success. And often when you get to these sort of journeys, you want horses that have had some success or at least raced well over this journey specifically to be betting on. He's about 2 to 1, so he's no fancy price, but I just like the way he finished off in the Metropolitan last start. Took a handy one for Lloyd Williams in Foundry, who had him at the weights and beat him home, but he got home really well along the rails. He goes up another furlong to a distance that he enjoys. I just think he draws to get the perfect run today. He'll race a little bit closer to the speed from gate number 2. He got a bit too far back there in the Metropolitan. Brett Novdella will have him handy to the speed without leading, and I think his acceleration will come to the fore here in the St Ledger. Of the remainder, and certainly Aubrey, no knock on this horse. He's currently about that 7 to 1 mark, so couldn't knock this horse. Richard Friedman, the trainer, he's a man who works here as a racing presenter and journalist. He's gone back to training racehorses. He still does some part-time work here, but he's had a lot of success. He's got a great strike rate since he started training again. Used to be one of Australia's best in combination with his 3 brothers. So stick with Richard, and you won't go wrong. He's won 2 of his last 3 starts, and his only defeat recently was in the Newcastle Cup when he was unlucky. So he could be your value here in Aubrey. And after that, it kind of gets a little bit even, in my opinion, and I think maybe Libran number 1 if you were looking for another tip. But I think the 2 here definitely are Big Duke number 2 and also Aubrey number 6.
The 7th race is the Sydney Stakes. I noticed some of the horses on the also eligible list for the Everest Stakes end up in here. Will it be one of them or one of the others for you in this race?
Well, Peter, you're right. This is basically the Everest Consolation. They've introduced a new race called the Sydney Stakes, and for all those that didn't get a run in the Everest, they get a chance at some decent prize money here as well in listed company, a $500,000 race. Well, for mine, in my opinion, number 12 here, In Her Time, very unlucky not to get a run in the Everest. I think the Premier Stakes is the feature lead-up race form-wise for the Everest, and she won that race. The horses she beat home that day in English and also Clearly Innocent, I think are going to be very hard to beat in the Everest. So with that logic alone, I think she's a standout bet on the card tomorrow, and she'll be very hard to beat. That Premier Stakes win was excellent, as we mentioned, and that followed some excellent form during the Brisbane Winter Carnival, when she finished 2nd in the Group 1 Stradbroke and 3rd in the Group 1 Tats Tiara as well. She draws well. She gets Corey Brown sticking with her as also, and I think at about 2 to 1, she's one of the standout bets of the day. She's probably my best bet on the card In Her Time of the whole Everest card. Takedown number 1 is another horse who's very honest, and you certainly get a good one for your money. Currently about 6 to 1 in pre-post markets. Ran 4th to In Her Time in that Premier, so also coming out of that same form line. I think that's the form line to take here. And of the rest, look, there's a few other chances. Washington Heights might be your value if you're looking for one of the bit of odds here. This is a 2-year-old who had a great season in Australia, went to Hong Kong, won races in Hong Kong, and now has come back as an older horse, now a 6-year-old, and he's won races in Australia as well. So not too many horses can do that. He draws barrier 1. He's currently 12 to 1 in markets. He's won 2 on the trot heading into this. It's his hardest test to date, but he's excellent overs, I think. But In Her Time for Mine is the obvious choice here, ahead of 1 and 10.
That's perfect. In Her Time, a strong push there, and then some prices for those who are allergic to long shots, one of whom has a name that will resonate with New Yorkers in Washington Heights. So that's
good. It will.
Let's move on. We got a few minutes left here. Let's move on to the big one. It's the Everest. $10 million on the line. How are we going to close out the Everest tournament?
Well, Peter, it's stunning money, isn't it? $10 million in a horse race over 6 furlongs. It's quite remarkable. And as we said at the top of the show, it's been so much publicity about this race and so much talk. And you know what? It's quite amazing. And we're so very lucky here in Australia as well that we've got so many sprinters in form heading into this race. I think it's probably the best group of sprinters that we've seen in this country, all in form at the same time for many a year. And it's all come together for this new concept, the Everest. So it's, I think, written in the stars, and that's what it has meant is it's a very difficult race to assess because they're all coming from different form lines. Some have been campaigning in Sydney, some have been in Melbourne, some have been in Queensland, and they all come together here, and we've got to try and work out how this race is going to play. Look, firstly, in terms of the speed, Hootson, the filly, she looks likely to lead. She's got gate number 1. She's always shown speed, and many sort of good judges are thinking that she might adopt that sort of catch me if you can tactic and just try to run them off their legs. Of course, the fillies in this race, her and She Will Reign and the like, they get in with sort of 18 pounds to the good in this weight for age contest of some of the other leading chances, the older males in the race. So certainly they've got the weight advantage, and that might play into effect if there is a bit of rain. Punters should take note as well, and players in your tournament, that there is a little bit of rain forecast. I don't think it'll make a big difference. It's not a lot of rain, just a few showers, but if there is a bit, it'll certainly help those down in the weights in this race, in the weight for age contest. So she'll lead. I think Vega Magic, Red Zell and Deploy will ensure that there's good pace in the race. And on that basis alone, I'm going for horses that are get-back types. I think there will be a bit of a pace collapse in this race, and you'll see those coming from the back to the fore. So sort of tossed and turned with tipping in this race. It's just a tricky race, but I think I've ended up settling on English here, the Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott. Now, this is a mare that's run 2nd and 3rd to Chautauqua in the last 2 runnings of the TJ Smith. Now, that's probably been the premier race sprint-wise in Australia in the last 2 years. 1,200 metres, 6 furlongs at Randwick. She's finished in the placings behind Chautauqua in this race the last 2 times they've met. The run in the Premier Stakes was incredible. She showed a wonderful turn of foot. She got back, and she was finishing faster than anything. In Her Time beat her home that day, but I think she was just that 1 run short. I think she'll be spot on. She's raced at her peak in her 3rd run back from a spell in each of her last 2 preparations. She's 3rd up today. She'll get back off the hot speed, and I expect her to be charging to the line, and I think she can win. To beat Chautauqua, he'll settle last. He's probably the best sprinter in Australia and one of the world's best sprinters. His last closing sectionals in the shorts and the Premier, the 2 lead-up races for him, have been better than anything. But a lot of people expected him to get a little bit closer than he did. And there's always that question mark on him as to whether he's come back now as a 7-year-old and whether his best is behind him. He is a champion, and you can't write off a champion. And the grey flash coming down the outside to score, we've seen some breathtaking wins from him in the past, and it wouldn't surprise me if he wins Chautauqua. And I think the value in the race will be with Clearly Innocent. This is a horse who's improved lengths and lengths. He's joined the Chris Lee stable. He gets Australia's best and Hugh Bowman to ride him. His run in the Premier was as good as any. He got boxed up on the fence, and when he saw daylight, he really charged to the line behind In Her Time at English. He's going to get a nice run towards the rear of the field as well, and we'll appreciate that hot tempo. He could be the one who's currently about sort of that 12 to 1 mark. I think you'll probably get about 8 to 1 about English, maybe 10 to 1. Chautauqua will probably start about 6 or 7 to 1. There'll be lots of value, but in the end, it's English on top for me, number 9, to beat 1 and 5.
That's fantastic. Great stuff, Jason. Thank you so much for taking time out to come and join us. Folks interested in following live can watch Jason on TVG Friday night Eastern Time, into Saturday morning. Check local listings for exactly when that coverage is going to be. And of course, everyone listening will hopefully be participating in the Everest Tournament. It's a DRF Tournament event presented in conjunction with Sky Racing World. Tournaments.drf.com. Please check it out. I want to thank Jason Witham so much for taking time out. It was great meeting you virtually, and thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, welcome, Peter, and likewise, great to meet you as well, and for all of your listeners as well. Look forward to seeing you in Sydney at Randwick in August if you happen to win.
I love it. It's going to be fantastic stuff. Folks, if you came in part way, I noticed a lot of people coming in throughout the show. You can check a full replay. drf.com/YouTube is the place to find it. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale, and you've been watching a handicapping session produced by drf.com.